Hi, I'm Nancy. Tonight I brought props, 10 input devices. Touch interfaces are everywhere these days. What does this mean for us as software creators? Touch is popular because it's intuitive. UI designers call it direct manipulation, as in, look ma, no cursor. You may be thinking phones and tablets, but touch isn't just for mobile anymore. You can't assume that your touch user interface is tied to screen size or portability or the presence of accelerometers and such. And look, Microsoft thinks we want touch along with a keyboard and mouse. Touch is coming to places where we need to really think about the physical interactions. The need to always be reaching out has already been nicknamed gorilla arms. We also have to think about the user's distance from their screens and whether they're holding the devices. We find ourselves with a range of device sizes, some with more than one method of input. Some software deals with this by switching between a touch mode and a cursor mode, like the Windows 8 Metro UI. So, what's different about touch mode? Well, we have to talk about fat fingers and where on the screen controls should appear, then gestures, and finally the overall interactive experience. When we say fat fingers, we mean buttons must be bigger and farther apart. It can also help to make the actual touchable target bigger than the visual target, like the tip of an iceberg. Note the real-world dimensions, not pixels. In many cases, people are not just touching the screen, they're holding the device with a few common grips. These direct us to some areas of the screen as being easier to touch than others. Next, we consider multi-touch, where a gesture is one combination of touches that's distinct from another. Each OS has its own definitions. For instance, a two-finger touch could be a clumsy one-finger touch or a unique gesture of its own. Don't rely on your experience with just one OS and its gestures. Next, consider the context of use. Public kiosks or room controls? Avoid unfamiliar gestures. Surgical suite? Gesture errors are more likely and catastrophic. Keep it simple. Now, we do find that various devices and OSs have agreement on some common gestures, like dragging. Still, imagine dragging your finger 2 feet across sticky glass. Once we've established our set of gestures, how do we map a gesture to an action in the app? Well, we consider what our user expects to happen, although that may vary with her experience. After a generation of digital natives, we're raising touch natives. To keep gestures intuitive, assign similar functionality to similar physical actions, like swipe and flick, both meaning move to next. It's also intuitive if the gesture is similar to an action in the real world, like the radio dial. Gestures let us support actions that happen right on the content, and not just in games and drawing apps. But when the content is the interface with no buttons, how will the user know what actions are even possible? UI designers call this discoverability. Many mobile apps simply remove the controls, forcing the user to trial and error, which is hard for those who aren't digital natives. We can help them. One way is to provide animation that prompts their actions. Even better, we can prompt them only when they pause. This just-in-time assistance requires more design and more code, but we need to meet the high expectations of touch users. For discoverability, let's also ask whether our visuals suggest available actions. One choice is to mimic the real world, skeuomorphism. iPad icons go partway there. Today's fashion is for flat UI, but what's clickable in that? The answer in this case was that the visuals changed on hover, but touch interfaces have no hover. And I think we all rely more than we realize on cursor feedback. But touch means no cursor. Again, software designers can help. Every gesture should result in immediate visual feedback, even just a color change. Plan well for the interactivity of your touch app, and it'll be more intuitive for all users while keeping those touch natives engaged. I'm Nancy Wersig-McClure. You can find me around Portland sometimes at these groups. Also, find me on my website, Explana Graphics, where I offer custom design services.